everybody, this is Christopher Brower here with Daily Motor, and today we're driving the 2022 Genesis GV70 Sport Prestige. Now, we have driven a GV70 on the channel before, but that was more of a lower down base model 2.5 liter four-cylinder, and we wanted to know what it was like to have the big engine, the Sport Prestige pack, and pretty much every other option you can get on the GV70. So that's what we have today. This car is powered by a 3.5 liter turbocharged V6. It makes about 375 horsepower, 391 foot-pounds of torque. That is backed by an 8-speed automatic. Being that this has a Sport Prestige pack, we're riding on 21-inch wheels. We've got special Napa leather seats with Alcantara inserts. We've got a sports steering wheel on this car. We've got an electronic limited slip differential in the back. And this car is finished in Matterhorn white. It's actually a matte paint. I don't know how well that'll show up on camera, but with the sun, you'll hopefully be able to see. It's still a metallic paint, but it is a matte finish. And it was raining when this car showed up, and I didn't even notice that it was matte. It's grown on me quite a bit. I think especially in white, it looks quite nice. It's just one more thing to set this Genesis GV70 aside. And speaking of this car being set aside, look at the styling on this GV70. I'm sure you have been as I've been walking around it, but it is absolutely stunning. We've got this big, large and in-charge grille up front, but not so big that it's preposterous. I think it fits the overall design language of the car very well. Our Genesis badge, of course, from a distance. You may be thinking, is that a Bentley? No, it's not. It's a Genesis. But otherwise, up front, split headlight design looks pretty nice. These wheels almost have like a golf ball pattern on them or something. They're quite peculiar, but I think they look nice. Just a Fat 5 spoke design wheel. Big brakes, bigger brakes than you'd get on just the normal GV70. And look at this body line. It starts here, fades in from the fender, goes all the way down the car to the back where it fades out into the taillight. There's so many cool lines on this car, and every time you look at it, you find another one. It's a very complex yet elegant design. I like how the headlights and taillights almost match. We've got a split taillight design here in the back too. We've got big fat exhaust tips coming out the back. Thank you, Boomer on a Harley, for revving past here. You still get this very nice rear valance here. As you can see, all-wheel drive, 3.5 turbo. Nice Genesis script here on the back. Our button to open the trunk is on the rear windshield wiper. Interesting spot for that. And in the back here, this should be folded down like so. We have quite a bit of room back here, and if you do open this up, as this already was, you can see you've got a little storage compartment here, and then if you open it one more time, it'll fold again. You can see we have a spare tire as well as a toolkit and a couple of other things. A couple other spaces just for small things under the floor. It's always nice to just have a couple additional spaces to put things, even a little luggage net here if you want to put a little box of sanitary wipes or something. 12-volt outlet there, and you've got tie downs if you need to, well, tie anything down back here. The seats fold down quite easily as well. We've just got little levers back here that will fold that seat flat for you. It'll do the same on the other side in a 60-40 split. So we don't get a completely flat fold here with the GV70, but it opens up quite a bit more room for you to haul things that are long that require you to, well, put the seats down and have just a little bit more room in here. I do like when seats go fully flat, but I think these go flat enough. Sometimes it's tough to get that in a sport-oriented SUV. These seats also adjust. You can have it in this all the way upright position. You can recline it back slightly, a little bit more, or you can actually recline it all the way back as far as that. Keep it nice and uniform here. Click that in. All right, let's go ahead and hop into the back seat of this GV70. I really don't want to stop looking at the outside of it because that is the best part of this car, undoubtedly. My favorite thing to do is just walk around this thing and stare at it because it's such an attractive SUV. They've absolutely nailed the styling on this car. But we can't stand outside and look at it all day, so let's hop in the back seat and see what that's all about. So sitting here in the back, I honestly have a pretty decent amount of legroom. This seat moves up when I get into the car. It has comfort access, so when the seat is moved up, I've got a couple extra inches of legroom as well. As far as design goes, it's gorgeous. We've got this really nice red leather material on our door panels, black leather on top. Interestingly, part of the Sport Prestige package is getting sunshades. So that's what we have back here. Carbon fiber trim here on the door panel as well. It's a very nice looking carbon fiber, kind of unique the way it's woven. And then a nice gloss material over the top of it. As I stated earlier, we've got Alcantara or micro suede, whatever you want to call it, inserts here on the seats. They are perforated. Little armrest back here with a couple of cup holders. And we also get our own climate control panel in the back of this Genesis GV70 with heated seats and your own little knobs to control the climate. You've got your vents here, and then a couple of outlets down here, USBs, and then just a 115 volt wall outlet as well. Give you a peek up front here at this gorgeous, gorgeous interior. Oh man. All right, let's go ahead and switch up to the driver's compartment and we'll talk about what's up front. Again, guys, look at these door panels. The contrast between that red, the black, the carbon fiber, the design of the door handle and the speaker grill, it all goes together quite nicely. Stepping in here, you see we've got that sport steering wheel. Otherwise, very, very nicely trimmed interior, of course, this being top trim. It's got leather everywhere. Everything is trimmed in something. Micro suede / Alcantara headliner on here. It's black. We've got a large panoramic moonroof. The top of the dash is stitched in leather. We've got red stitching that goes all the way across. Also nice to see on our red leather, we've got black stitching, and on our black leather, we've got red stitching. So very cool. It's the little things like that that make interiors like this excel. From the back seat, you can control the passenger seat with this little switch here. If you are a businessman and you're being driven back there and you want to move the passenger seat out of your way, well, you can do so quite easily. Pretty cool feature. Just don't let your kids find out about it because they'll just be moving you the whole time that you're riding in the car. Center console's got a good amount of room. A little bit of a removable tray there as well. Cup holders. There's a cubby here that will fit your phone if you're wired in for Apple CarPlay. We do have CarPlay. My phone is not wired in right now, but you do have Apple CarPlay. This infotainment screen is gorgeous. Look at this home screen, just the calm screen that the car defaults to when you start it up. On the left-hand side, we get a display of weather. Today is sunny blue skies. That's reflected here on our infotainment screen. Say perhaps it's cloudy and raining. Well, it'll show you that right there on the left side of the screen. And on the right side, we have our GPS display, our map. You can see where we are. And if you're listening to the radio or if your phone is plugged in, you're listening to some of your music, it will show it right there below the time. Now, this screen can be controlled in a couple of different ways. We have this knob down here, similar to BMW's iDrive, or you can use your finger and swipe. I like when they give you a choice. Would I use this as a touchscreen? Probably not, just because the knob is easier in reach. The screen is kind of far away if you're actually driving. But it's nice because if you have a passenger and they want to use the screen, they can lean up, use the touch controls and whatnot. And you as the driver have this knob to also control the infotainment. So that is a nice feature. I appreciate that. And otherwise, this infotainment is really just laid out quite nicely. That makes a nice click as well. But to be honest with you guys, usually when I film these reviews, I leave the screen on Apple CarPlay because I just like how that looks. It's a nice consistent view throughout the video. But this home screen is so pretty that I don't even have my phone into Apple CarPlay. I've just been driving around looking at this screen. Even when my phone is in CarPlay, I don't even leave it on the CarPlay screen. So that's how much I like not only the design of the screen, but also what's on it. Otherwise, just the overall design of the interior, the way that the dash is tilted towards the driver, our climate control screen here, which it is haptic touch, but at least it only does one thing. This screen doesn't do anything else besides be a climate control system, and that's okay. I can respect that. Would I prefer to have actual buttons? Yes, but this does an okay job. The whole cluster is holographic. I'm not sure how well that shows up on camera, and we also get a heads-up display as well. Buttons on the steering wheel, they look like they're haptic touch, but they're actual buttons. This whole panel moves Obviously, we're not in the right conditions to do cruise control because we're in park. Thank you, car, for that. Otherwise, well, there's ambient lighting, but you can't see that right now because it's daytime. Overall, this is where this car excels to me. Exterior design, interior usability, and also once we get on the road, you'll see all of the driver aids as well. But that is where Hyundai, Kia, Genesis especially, that is where they just excel the most. And they're just doing such a great job, and I always love driving these Genesises. So why don't we get it out on the Daily Motor test route and see what it's actually like to drive. So our shifter is also a dial. It's very close to our infotainment dial, and not only is it very close, it's very similar in size. So you have to train yourself to not hit this instead of the shifter. I have done it a couple of times. I find it most common when I'm going into reverse. So I'll be in drive, I'm pulling up and getting ready to back into a parking spot, and I'll hit this dial instead. And it sometimes can get a little bit confusing, but it's one of those things where if you actually owned this car, after a couple of days, you would get used to it. For example, I only did that on the first day I was driving this car, and I haven't done it since. We have a number of different parking cameras on this GV70, just a normal reverse camera. You can see our 360-degree camera there. But then when you put it in drive, we have a full 3D view of our GV70 that you can use your finger, you can move around and see where you're going. The wheels turn, they spin. Look at that. Let's go ahead and pull into a parking spot, and you can watch the car do so on the screen. Check that out. You want to look around you, make sure you're not going to run into any poles or walls or anything. Pretty cool stuff. All right, guys, let's go ahead and take this GV70 out for a drive. So I touched earlier how we drove the 4-cylinder variant of the GV70. That car's quite a bit cheaper. In fact, that car was like $15,000 less than this Sport Prestige 3.5 liter car. And the question I want to answer today is it worth it to go full out with your GV70 spec, get the Sport Prestige, get the V6, get the matte paint, whatever you want to do? Or should you spend $15,000 less on a slightly more conservative GV70? So let's go ahead and feel this thing out a little bit. I'll show you the powertrain and show you how quickly it moves and whatnot, and we'll talk about what makes this good, what makes the other one good, and which one you should buy. So that was 60 miles an hour. This thing is quick. 375 horsepower, 390 foot-pounds of torque. You can really feel that. It's not the fastest thing in the world, obviously. It's a big, heavy SUV, but it's quite ample power for this platform. I don't think I would really want any more. Yeah, you've just got plenty. It's plenty for a car in this segment of this character and in this price range. It does a very good job at that. We've also got a couple different drive modes here, Sport and Sport Plus. Sport Plus is very sporty. You can hear it downshifting there. And with that electronic limited slip differential, you'll even get it to kick the tail out sometimes. But that's quite alarming in an SUV because it can be a bit bouncy with this long travel suspension. Ooh, it's so snappy. Oh my gosh. Oh, a drive mode like that, it's good in the G70, but it's really just alarming in this car. I mean, do you really want to be that snappy in a car that sits this high above the road? I don't really think so. And when I say sits high above the road and when I say long travel suspension, I mean comparatively comparing this to just a normal Genesis G70. I mean, obviously this sits quite a bit higher than a car like that, but that Sport Plus mode is just as aggressive as it is in the Genesis G70, so it can be a little bit alarming. But when you're just in comfort mode, actually we'll bump it back into just normal sport mode here. Yeah, pretty good handling through there. When you're in sport mode, it really makes the steering heavy. I mean, it's very, very heavy steering. I very much prefer the steering in comfort mode. Over the rough ride section here, yeah, not too bad. Even on 21-inch wheels, this Genesis GV70 manages to maintain quite a smooth ride. It's not crashy or bouncy. It's quite a nice place to be. It just rides down the road effortlessly, especially when you put your lane keep assist on, your steering assist rather. It does a great job. Every Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis that has this system, they are hard to beat for their price point. It's admittedly, it's more impressive in things like a Kia Rio than it is in a big GV70, but at least you have it across the board. You can take manual control of this 8-speed automatic with the paddle shifters up here on the steering wheel. They react pretty quickly, not the fastest I've ever felt. Got a slight delay. Just such heavy steering in sport mode. But she'll grip, even on these all-season tires. Yeah, that may be the fastest I've ever gone around that in an SUV. Dynamically, it's set up for performance. And that's kind of hilarious in this platform, but it gets the job done. Comfort mode, please, not Sport Plus. Actually, let's go into Eco mode. Try out our steering assist here around a corner. You guys can see how well that does here. Wait for it to turn green, and there you go. Steering assist there doing quite a good job, but that's nothing new. We know this system to be class leading. Something I really like about these Genesis cars as well, and any Hyundai or Kia that has a digital gauge cluster, is when you put your turn signal on, you get a camera for your blind spot, so that's pretty nice. Makes changing lanes nice and easy, and you don't have to stress as much about someone being in your blind spot because you get a nice view there on the cluster. So what about price? That's one of the big factors when comparing a 4-cylinder car versus this V6 Sport Prestige car. So the Genesis GV70 actually starts at just under 42 grand, which seems insanely cheap. I don't know how they sell them that cheap at a base model level. I've never been in a base model car, but I mean, it looks exactly the same. You just have a couple different interior bits, smaller wheels, and of course a smaller engine. But this Genesis GV70, as spec'd out as it is 65 grand. And that may sound expensive after I just told you that the base model car with no options is just over 40. But when you consider other things in this segment, and when you consider all of the options that this car has, all of the things in general that you get in here, in my opinion, I don't think $65,000 is too much for this car. I think it's appropriately priced in the segment among its German rivals. I mean, if you consider a Porsche Macan S with similar options, of course, that's a Porsche. It's going to drive a little bit better. It's going to be dynamically slightly better to drive. But, I mean, do people really need that in this class? I mean, Porsche enthusiasts, sure, that's the car that they choose as a daily driver. But someone that's cross-shopping a Porsche Macan with a GV70, do they care about that German feel? I don't know. So, in that way, the GV70 makes a little bit more sense. Now, the GV70 against itself, against a 4-cylinder car, I don't think the V6 is worth it. And if I were to get a GV70, I would go for the 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, because you still get around 300 horsepower, and it's really not too big of a difference. Of course, there is a difference, but it's not drastic. It's not drastic enough to where I would never consider buying the 4-cylinder. So if I were to do it, I would get just a mid-grade 4-cylinder Genesis GV70, and I'll link down below my review to that car because that was just a pretty ideal spec. 50 grand, it was dark blue with like a saddle-colored interior, and to be honest with you guys, that is just about perfect for me. That's exactly how I would have a GV70. If you could stay right around that 50 grand mark, you get quite a bit more value with this platform. In this particular car, you're paying more for, obviously, the V6 if you want to go faster. This matte white paint, this different steering wheel, these Napa leather seats with Alcantara inserts, and I don't know that you really need all of that because the exterior design is still the same. You've still got this crazy cool dashboard design. You've still got your heads-up display. You've still got your turn signal cameras. I don't know. It's one of those things where you just have to decide if the spec is worth it. But to me, I would go with the 4-cylinder, spec'd around 50 grand. That's where I think peak Genesis GV70 value is. So to sum it up, it's a really good car. This won Motor Trend SUV of the year, so obviously it's doing something right. In the looks department, it absolutely beats everything, knocks everything else out of the water. Nothing else looks this crazy and costs as little money as this does. A lot of people have thought that this is a Bentley that I'm driving this week. I've had a couple people swipe up on my Instagram story and say, I thought that was a Bentley. And, you know, if I didn't know much about cars, I would think the same thing. I don't blame them at all. The logo is similar. The overall design language, I could see how you could mistake that grille for being a Bentley. So it certainly has road presence, and that's important in this segment of car where a lot of things are just really normal looking, and this GV70 is definitely not normal looking. So for that, I really like it. Dynamically, I like it as well. It's good to drive. It doesn't feel German, but why should it? It isn't German. So I don't know. It's hard to sum up when it's a little bit of a disturbance in this normal segment because the Germans have dominated this segment for so long. The BMW X3, the Audi Q5, the Porsche Macan, the Mercedes GLC, or whatever Mercedes is calling their SUV that's this size nowadays. Those cars have always dominated the segment, and now the Koreans have come out with something that looks better, drives just as good for anyone that's looking for a car in this segment, and honestly costs less to get similar or even better options. So you really have to think about where the best value is, and this GV70 is pretty good value for money, in my opinion. All right, guys. Well, I hope that sums up the GV70 3.5 liter Prestige for you. Again, I'll link in the description a little bit more in-depth review on just the normal GV70 if you're curious also, or if you're cross-shopping this with the 4-cylinder version. They do actually offer quite a few different options for matte colored paint. You've got this Matterhorn white. There's also a green, there's a burgundy, and I think there's a black or a gray or something. But I would probably go for this white if I was going to do matte, because it's a very forgiving matte color. It doesn't necessarily look matte. You wouldn't always notice it and be looking at, oh, that's a matte colored car, unless that's what you want. But in this setting, I would have the white. I think it looks great in the Sport Prestige trim as well with these 21-inch wheels, and especially paired with that red interior. It's quite a solid spec. All right, guys, well, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Christopher Brower here with Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.